Hello and welcome to The Character Forge. Name TBD. This is a pilot episode for a series of tabletop role playing game character creation sessions that we will be playing. I am Captor, and along with me is my cohort and companion here at the Forge.
Hello, I'm Randall. I'm here to help. I don't know what I'm saying. Sorry.
It's alright. Like I said, it's a pilot where we're figuring out how we're gonna. The intro is always the hardest part of these videos, but it's all right as long as our content's good. We can just make it awkward for the
Well,
first 30 seconds, and
that's questionable too. So,
confidence. We need to show people confidence. Uh, but what is the main goal of this series? You may be wondering, and that is we've been mulling around this idea about a series of videos where we talk about and create tabletop RPG characters for a multitude of games: Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, Monster of the Week, Fate, all that stuff. And then once you listen to the video, understand kind of the concepts we're going for, you can actually download a PDF of that character and take it to a tabletop session in case you wanted to try the character out or if you needed a character that you need to quickly sub in for. And we kind of called it the Forge because you come in, we make it for you, you pour it down, and you take it on your way. And this is kind of our, like, we wanted to call it like the character library, but it just didn't fit the Lost Forge tabletop setting, so I'm calling it the Forge. But it could be a library. It could be
yeah, I
like,
do like the name Character Forge. That does sound kind of fun too. But yeah, I mean, we'll workshop what it's actually called as we develop it, I guess.
yeah, it could be the character workshop.
There you go.
But with all tabletop RPGs, the first thing everybody has to go through is a session zero. And a session zero usually includes several things, and we're going to walk you through what that is.
Yep.
What setting are we using today for our character creation, Mr. Randall?
We're currently using we're just using D&D Beyond's character builder, just because it's pretty accessible and a lot of people understand the D&D system, or they're familiar at least with people who play it.
Yeah, that's true. Like when we were talking about this, we're like, let's do Pathfinder 2e, and then we were like looking at it and we were going through the list. I'm like, this is a lot, and you're just like, can we just do D&D
Well,
Beyond? It's so easy.
yeah, well, it's easy. It's something that's very accessible for new users, especially for people who haven't maybe done a tabletop RPG before. It kind of holds your hand through creating a character. I'd say that, like, the easiest system to make a character for though is Fate by far.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is probably a good first stab at this.
Yeah, definitely. And since we're going to be walking you through the first character, if you want to follow along and create a character through D&D Beyond, the platform is free. You are limited to a subsection of skills and abilities if you are using the free trial, or if you own the books, you will be available to use anything that you've purchased on that platform. So if you've got the books but never created a character before and you need help on what exactly the steps are to do it, follow right along, or like we said at the end, you'll be able to take our characters from our website and download them and use them when you feel like it. Session zero. So if you've never done a session zero before, this is where you have all players or some of the players who are available to show up, sit down, and make your character. If you are the dungeon master in the scenario, you would be facilitating. Usually that means you bring the character sheets, you have the books, you provide some context to the world, mostly like what the characters will be doing, where they're starting out, a little bit of the story, and like kind of a opening synapse of here's what we're doing with our characters. And you help players build their characters. Since the DM pretty much makes everything else in the world, you're pretty much there to kind of be the teacher and help build the characters and answer any questions as people are going step by step.
Yep, and not every group tends to do a session zero anymore, but it's good to have it, especially now with like tools like D&D Beyond's Character Builder. Um, you have you have the ability to create your character before you even show up to the table, but it's always good to kind of finish off your character or roll your dice for ability scores with your DM. Um, or even just help flesh out a backstory with your DM to help weave into the lore of the story that they've been creating, and that can help elevate just your experience as a player overall.
As a DM, when I do a session zero, I like to let everybody get a chance to get comfortable around each other and encourage that kind of sense of role play, because a lot of people I bring in aren't comfortable with tabletop RPGs before. So that gets them to know the people in the group, to kind of understand what they're going to be playing with, talk about like building their groups, like, hey, I'm going to be playing a cleric. Is anybody else playing a cleric? How are you going to settle the group dynamic a little bit early and understand how these characters will meet each other, or if they already know each other?
Yeah, the last thing you want is to have two bards and two clerics in a six-person party. But I mean, I've had that happen.
It's always fun. It's very interesting. But if you talk it out before and understand one bard is definitely like portraying something that they're not, and then you find out later they're a bard. Or I think in one case we had a cleric who was a lawful good cleric, and then we had a lawful evil cleric, and it was literally like the angel and devil of the rest of the party
Oh, that's
going
nice.
through this campaign. So you had like the fighter, and then you had like the ranger and wizard and stuff like that, and then you'd have like the evil one. He's like, you know, that orphanage is sure flammable. And then it's like, no, give them your tithing, give them everything. And so everybody who's neutral in the middle is like,
Well, I don't
please
know what
stop.
to do.
It got out of hand, and I think one cleric bludgeoned the other cleric. But that's way down the road as far as, you know, getting crazy with characters and stuff. At this case, if you're sitting down for the first time, this is when you learn about making your character. And the first thing you need to know is... So the first thing you want to know when you're building your character is the class that you would like to play and the species or the affiliation in which your character is, you know, belongs to. So in most fantasy, you have your standard dwarf, your elves, humans,
Orcs,
orcs, half orcs.
tieflings.
Definitely, if you're starting out, and most people do, people love to make the edgiest characters possible. They want to have like the personification of a 90s shonen anime character who's badass, has no flaws, and really kicks ass. So, we're gonna make some characters that are edgy and kick some ass.
Yeah, we figured why not. It'll be
Yeah,
fun.
we're gonna start with the typical first character, and as we progress making characters, we'll kind of help you explore other storylines and character traits that we like to play and other people like to play as we bring other people on. So, who wants to go first? Do you want to go first, or you want to?
I'll let you take the lead on this. I want to see what you have or what you consider to be an edgelord character.
Well, for me, I think always the edgiest character that always sits down at my table are half elves or full elves of some sort. So I decided to make a elf with the most edgy caster class possible, the warlock. Now, warlocks are characters who are not enslaved, but they have pacts or agreements with an extraplanar being that gives them their magical powers. You know, working for an evil demon god or Cthulhu or something like that, giving them, you know, magical powers in with the price of slavery or whatever, servitude or whatever. And so I built my character, who I named Gert Warcaster.
Gert Warcaster. That's quite a name.
Gert. Thank you. I was going to be Bert, but I wasn't cool enough, so I
Uh,
just changed that to a G, baby.
Understandable.
Looking at Gert here, we'll pull up his character sheet in full on screen, and you can see that there is a lot going on. First thing you want to take care of is your 6 major stats. That is strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. These are your bread and butter character stats. Depending on how your DM wants to assign these 6 stats, you will either be doing rolling dice or doing a point buy system. You want to make sure that these align with your class's specialty. You don't want to give a fighter barely any strength to use his abilities and a lot of intelligence. So you want to kind of cater these stats to the player.
Yep.
In my case of a warlock, his casting comes from charisma. So you can see I've dumped a lot of extra charisma into that stat.
How did you get your numbers, by the way? Created a character. How do you get these ability scores?
Right. So we mentioned a point buy or roll system. For this particular character, we rolled 4d6 or six-sided dice. It's the standard six-sided dice you see with most board games. You roll those four dice, and then you take those four dice and remove the dice with the lowest number value. So if you rolled like a 4, a 6, a 2, and a 1, you'd remove the 1, add the rest of the dice up, and that would give you one of the stat numbers. Then you'd put those stats into a pool of numbers. You do that 5 more times, and then you can distribute those numbers where you see fit. Sometimes, if you feel really spicy, before you even know what kind of character you're going to play, I like to roll those dice in order from strength all the way to charisma and see where that lands, and then I determine my character. So if my character is a very frail character but very smart, I might play a warlock or a wizard or sorcerer or something, and I let that character play
That's
out. And
fun.
I'll even take negative stats. It's not a balanced set, and if you're trying to play for the play, like be a combat ready character, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you want something that's more spicy for role playing or kind of a challenge, I recommend it. I had a fighter that had a charisma of an 8 but a confidence of an 18, so that always led to very funny situations where this ugly, very ill-composed kind of warrior dude will like get into shenanigans and roll higher than he should and talk his way into things that he shouldn't be able to. So how about you, Randall? What do you like to do as far as getting your character stats?
I like doing the rolls. I think the 4d6 is a fun way to do it. Some of the things that I've heard some house rules do is also to make it a bit more forgiving for some people, especially is do the 4d6, and then if you get a 1 during any of that, you get to re-roll the 1. Um, it kind of like makes it a bit more forgiving, and you also have the chance of maybe instead of having a 1 be the dice that you drop, maybe it's like a 2 or a 3. And that kind of because maybe you rolled something a bit higher. I've seen that swing some stats here and there, but no, I think the 4d6 is probably one of my favorite ways to get stats.
Do you do point buy? Have you ever done point buy? Because I don't like point buy.
I've never done point buy. I honestly have no idea what point buy is.
Point buy is where you start out with a certain amount of. I think you start with 12 in all factors, or like there's a certain number you set.
Oh, is it kind of like Fallout special stats or
Yeah,
something?
and you can make a very balanced character, and some DMs let you go into the negatives and get more points
Oh,
to
like
put into
make
other spot.
yourself dumber to make yourself stronger,
Yeah,
things like that.
it's a more balanced thing if you want a more gamey thing. But I also I'm a person who likes flaws in their character. They're not good at everything. But
Yeah,
if
yeah. I
you're
mean, you don't want to like, yeah, people are gonna want to be a jack of all trades, but people like really like to lean into having flaws with their characters.
yeah, and that starts it starts great kind of role play moments and stuff. It's like, well, why would we want this person to lead the charge? He sucks at he sucks at
Yep.
communicating with people. Let's get him away from characters.
Or
So
it's
that
like there's a group that I'm in. We have an orc that's a bard, um, with a charisma that's very low, cause they're an orc, and they decided that they wanted to go to college instead, and their instrument of choice is war drums essentially, and they just bang on the drums for everything and make really simple rhymes, and that's our bard.
he's trying to better himself. Don't get down on that man.
He went to college.
Yeah, Bard College. It's like the
Exactly.
community college of the fantasy world. The ITT Tech.
Good old DeVry.
Oh. So that's the point buy system. In this case, my stats, I went 14, 16, 15, 13, 13, 19. Anything that is 12 and 13 will give you a +1 to any check that requires that skill set. And then every two integers afterwards, you get a +2, +3, +4. No skill can have up to more than 20 unless you have special magical items or otherwise. I believe it's been a while since I've actually had a character live long enough to see anything past 20.
Yeah, I mean that also gets into usually campaigns don't last that long, to be honest, but yeah. If you get up to +20s on things, good for you.
Yeah. But remember, being too good at stuff is also suspicious, and your DM will start throwing things at you.
Yeah, the DM will adjust accordingly.
Right. So once you get your main stats, based on your class, going through the D&D Beyond character creator or your pen and paper, you'll need to start finding out your background. And your background is a additional modifier that affects the way your player comes from. And just like in any good story, a background would be living on the streets or grew up in high society. Maybe he was traveling with a carnival for a very long time. Any kind of, interesting background. So you could go through these lists, and there is a set number of backgrounds in the main core rulebooks, and then most supplemental guides also have more backgrounds based on the themes of those books. So if there's a background that doesn't fit your character, kind of dig around, look and see if people have found a background in one of the other books, like Tasha's Guide to Everything or stuff, and what kind of background would work best for you. I'm trying to find my background here on the sheet as soon as I'm looking for it.
Your background will probably be in. It might be in description.
Yep, it's in description. I went with The Haunted One. And you are hunted by someone so terrible that you dare not speak of it. You've tried to bury it and run away from it, to no avail. Whenever this thing is haunts you, cannot be slain with a sword or banished with a spell. It might come from you as a shadow on the wall, a blood-curdling nightmare, a memory that refuses to die, or a demonic whisper in the dark. The burden takes its toll, isolating you from most people and questions your sanity. You must find a way to overcome it. So, as an edgy character, I'm always running away from my dark, brutal past. And the Haunted One does adjust stuff by giving me 2 skill proficiencies in investigation, religion, or in survival. In this case, I do investigation and survival because I'm afraid of everything and everyone that's coming after me. And then you also get to pick some other things based on your sheet. But the book itself goes into detail pretty well on what a background does and adjusts either in a positive or a negative way things for your character. Usually, if it takes stuff away, it enhances another skill or benefits you in some other things. Sometimes backgrounds actually give you items or additional gold or sometimes even light magical items, depending on the background you go for.
Yep, or sometimes even a bit of a, not quite a feat, but a little feature. Um, or something that you can weave into the story. We'll get into it a bit more with mine, but my background, I can actually I can work with my DM to kind of enhance the story a bit more or get a little more information out of things. Um, but yeah, no, backgrounds, they're seen sometimes as a bit of just flavor for a character, and not a lot of people think that it's necessary to have a background, but it's like you're saying, it's almost always beneficial to have a background because it'll give you either extra proficiencies or extra items or just enhance the gameplay experience for you in some way.
And you can always, if you have an idea for a character and you can't find a background that suits it, find the next best thing and work with your DM. The nice thing is most dungeon masters don't play directly by the book in most home settings, so they'll work with you to find something that will fit as close to what you want to do as far as a background as possible. If you're playing in an adventure league or in a sanctioned event, which is a whole other thing we'll get into down the line, that is a little bit less likely. But in those situations, you're not really playing mostly for the role play. You're there to dungeon crawl and complete a task, and then just it's more
Yeah,
like
you're there to roll some dice.
yeah, you're there for like the dungeon crawl and not really the social aspect in between. Once you've gotten your stats down, you start filling out your other stats that you need to do. Since I'm a caster, a few things that I need to figure out are some of my caster traits, like my old one or the dark being that I serve. What is the actual term for it? One
The
second.
great old one.
It is the otherworldly patron. That's the name of it.
Ah, yes.
I have to pick an otherworldly patron that I serve, And based on who I choose, I get different benefits. I chose the Great Old One, inspired by Cthulhu or other,
A classic.
other old beings from out the Nether Realm. And what this grants me is special spells, Dissonant Whispers and Tasha's Hideous Laughter, at level 1 that I can choose for my spell list, and get Awakened Mind. Starting at level 1, your alien knowledge gives you the ability to touch the minds of other creatures you see telepathically and speak to any one creature you see within 30 feet. You don't need to share the language with the creature for it to understand your telepathic utterances, but the creature must be able to understand at least one language, so I can't talk to squirrels. So,
Wow, that's unfortunate.
I know, it's kind of a shame. But that's what I get, and there's some other stuff based on which being that you do your pact with, and selecting your pack magic, and we won't go into too much into that, but most characters have a grid of spells and their first level, second level, third level spells that you can pick from. Usually, you get some more based on your background as well. Sometimes you actually get to pick spells that you wouldn't normally learn from your background as a certain class. I think, like, as a warlock, you can learn, like, arcane spells if you choose a certain background, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah, and warlocks actually have a really fun thing with their spells, actually, where whatever, if you're casting a spell, it is always at the highest level available.
Yes.
Like as you're saying, with like a grid of spells or like or spell slots necessarily that you can have. Someone like a wizard will have X amount of first level spell slots, and then Y amount of second level spell slots, and Z number of third spell slots, and so forth. Warlocks don't have different level spell slots. They just have spell slots, albeit very limited. I believe it's one at level 1. Um, but when you start getting into like level 3, I think it's second level is every spell,
Yep.
and level 5 turns into third level spell slots. Um, so that's really fun.
So if you are playing, if you're not familiar with the caster, I think Warlock is your best bet because you don't have to worry about individual spell slots. I can cast X amount of spells a day up at the highest level. And they come with one of the best spells in the game, which is Eldritch Blast.
Oh, that's not even a spell, that's a cantrip.
Yeah, but it's still a spell, but it's a cantrip spell. We'll go into more details when we actually talk about combat and playing your character for the first time in another episode. We won't go into it entirely about the mechanics of how to play an individual system. But in this case, think of it as you have a certain amount of charges each day to cast spells, but the spells are powerful and they're always going to be at the most powerful state, unlike a wizard who has to kind of trickle out miss spells and some okay spells and then some good spells, but they vary from, you know, spell to spell.
No, warlocks are great, and depending on which pact you choose, um, you can get some more fun, some even more spells outside of what you originally have, and like you're saying, get access to arcane. If you take something like, well, Pact of the Tome, we won't get into it too much, but you can take even more spells with that one.
Yeah. And then finally, you pick your equipment and pick your backgrounds and descriptions about yourself. What I kind of made this character become is a character who is running away from his horrible choice to serve a cult. And
Nice.
so Gert joined some sort of evil cult or religion and gained these powers of the old gods, then realized, hey, that's not really my jam. I kind of want to be my own person again. So he left the commune. He left his world, and now the cult is hunting him. That is where the Heart of Darkness comes from. This cult of evil magic wizards or warlocks or whatever are constantly using demons or shadows and dark magic to hunt him as he's going from place to place to place. So he's always traveling. So that's how I tied in the Hunted Ones feature to this character. As for alignment, I chose neutral evil. Usually we don't recommend doing an evil character, but for the sake of a warlock, a lot of people want to have an evil warlock. Not all warlocks are good. I chose neutral because he did some shitty things in the past, but he's
Yeah.
trying to redeem and become his own person again. And through the course of working with other people in the party, he can hopefully find his true calling as a person. And that's where I kind of set him as neutral, is there is room for him to improve.
There's always room to improve.
Yeah. And you never know, there might be a character in the group that makes him turn purely evil because of his annoyance, or in some cases there might be a paladin or a lawful good character who senses that evil in him, and there could be conflict because these two, it's like maybe Gert wants to be a better person, but this other person keeps hounding him for his past actions, and there could be a lot of talk at the table, and maybe they'll be able to repent. And there's some good stories that can kind of come of it. It's very vague and very broad because these characters are made to be handed off to you, the player, if you want
to do what you want with,
Yeah.
and maybe make changes that you think are necessary.
Yeah, and we will never be insulted if you find this character sheet and you adjust and change it based on your preferences. The whole point of the Character Forge is for you to kind of get a baseline, kind of an idea of what you want to do with a character and take it and move forward. It's kind of a reference library of kind of like, it's a cookbook recipe, but maybe you don't like cilantro in all of your food. So you pull out the cilantro, you add some oregano, bada bing bada boom, works perfectly for what your taste buds. Like, that's what we're going for.
Yeah.
And that's Gert. Gert Warcaster. Your friendly neighborhood warlock. Still a little edgy, but friendly.
And you said he was an elf or a half elf?
I went with half elf.
Okay.
Because, half elves always have that problem of they don't fit in pure elven society or the human society. So, they're more susceptible for, hey, how's it going? No one likes you. You want to come over here and, wear a robe and chant a bit? We'll think you're cool.
I like that.
What about you? I've talked about Gert long enough. What do you got cooking in your forge?
Yeah. So I have a character that I worked on called Marduk Boulder Cloak. Decided to go with this most edgy character ever, a halfling, a Lightfoot halfling at that. And I'm going with the edgy class of a rogue. I know that's something that a lot of people do, is they're not necessarily maybe their first character, but somebody that they really want to get up in there and just start stabbing, get that sneak attack bonus. Um, so Marduk is, as I said, he's a Lightfoot halfling, um, and I went with Lightfoot and halfling because of the racial traits of lucky, where if I roll a 1 on a d20 for attack roll or ability check or saving throw, I can re-roll the die, so that helps from crit failures from happening. I've got brave, which gives me advantage for saving throws from being frightened. Don't know exactly where that would come into play, but it's just a nice little flavor thing that Marduk is never afraid. Um, Halfling nimbleness is something that's very nice, where I can move through a space of any creature that's a size larger than me. So good for getting around the battlefield, getting in with those sneak attacks, and getting out without, hopefully without taking too much damage. And then naturally stealthy, which again really plays into the rogue archetype of you can attempt to hide even when you're obscured only by a creature that is at least one size larger than you. So most people in a D&D party, or most species, most characters are medium size. So being a small size halfling means you can just hide behind your tank and you are hidden, which what happens after you're done hiding. Gives a nice little sneak attack opportunity. So that's pretty much why I went with the halfling. And rogue, of course, everybody loves a sneaky rogue. And I went with your typical proficiencies of being proficient in stealth, sleight of hand, deception, and athletics, because, got to be super sneaky, got to be able to lie about things, and got to be able to steal stuff, loot stuff. And then, of course, trying to be proficient with thieves' tools, and doubling down in the expertise is something you get as a rogue at level 1, which just gives you 2 proficiencies for skills. So the first one I did was I doubled down into stealth and got even more proficient in stealth, and then proficiency in thieves tools because uh, most D&D campaigns have at some point some sort of locked door or chest that is locked or some sort of lock that thieves tools can come in handy with, or not even just locks, but I believe thieves tools can also help with traps as well,
Hmm.
disarming traps if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so,
Uh,
depending on how the traps are set up in the rulebook. Some of them are susceptible to thieves' tools.
Yep. Yep. So just being able to take care of some of those, because as you're dungeon crawling, DM will most likely set up a trap somewhere within the dungeon. Um, at least every DM I've had always sets up a trap,
What?
which is
We
fun.
would never do such a thing. Never. Wink.
But yeah, so the got expertise in stealth. So as you can see with my character sheet that's up on screen, you can see that um, in the abilities, I am +8 to stealth right now as a level 1 rogue, uh, which is kind of fun, kind of broken at level 1, but that's when you really double down into it. And then my sleight of hand is a +6, persuasion is +5, deception is +5, acrobatics is +4. Trying to embody those like typical rogue traits that you would normally see. Somebody that's sneaky, they're it's good sleight of hand. They're persuasive and they're good at lying. So kind of leaning into that a bit of charisma, and you can see that with the ability scores that I have here of of really leaning into dexterity and charisma, and then a bit in constitution as well, because something that a lot of rogues will learn quickly is you may be sneaky, but you're going to be on the front lines if you're going to do those sneak attacks, most likely. So, need some beef behind you, or else you're just going to be a weak little boy and just get smacked by a frontline tank.
Yeah, that's one thing a lot of people don't realize is rogues are glass cannon classes in most RPGs where they do a lot of things, but they also have a lot of flaws to, and one of them being they have no magic in most cases, or at least early on, a lot of them don't have magic. A lot of them don't have the best armor because they're trying to be stealthy and subtle.
Leather armor is pretty much what you're going to be using.
And if you're sneaking someone from behind, you're also in the back line, so you mess it up, all of a sudden boom, there's two or three bad guys standing right next to you going, why is there a knife in our leader's back? And you'd be like,
I don't know.
this is
But
your
yeah,
Uber
no,
Eats.
it's always good to get some more beef with Constitution, and I thought about that especially with being a halfling. They don't really have a lot of health to begin with. So as you can see that even though I have my Constitution as high as it is, my I only have 11 hit points for my max at level 1,
Yeah, it's still more
which
than Gert only has 10.
yeah, but still like you can how much can you hit for at that level as well? Like uh that's where it's dangerous being on the front line. Like Gert's at least on the back line, hopefully at least. But yeah, being a 11 HP Marduk, but AC of 15, which isn't too bad.
That's pretty good.
But it's just your early encounters are super. Uh, I don't want to say unbalanced, but they're very swingy. They swing in one way or another very quickly as level 1 characters.
So what's the personality of your character? What makes him edgy? Is he like got a revenge? Got a list of 14 names of people that came into my halfling hovel, and I gotta curse them by stabbing them and cutting them off my leg.
He's pretty much your I don't want to say run of the mill rogue, but I went with a criminal or spy background, and this is something that I figured could be tapped into for story as well, where you have a criminal contact feature where I have a essentially let me back up a second before I get into that. Marduk's background is that of a criminal, not of a spy, very criminal. Um, and he runs in a bunch of different rings, Never working with the same group twice. That's his policy. Um, and he's just always been a life of crime. His parents never knew his parents, kind of been isolated, and being a halfling kind of looked down upon literally and figuratively by by a good portion of the world. And he wants to get back, and he wants to take what's his. Um, and so I went with a bit of a chaotic neutral alignment with him, where not necessarily edgy where he's evil, but edgy in more of a I do what I want to get what I want sort of mentality. That's Marduk.
he's
Um,
he's learned that like playing by the rules and doing things society's way has always just screwed him over. So he's like,
yeah, rules are more of suggestions for people. That's how Marduk views it. But anyway, getting back into the criminal contact feature, because Marduk has worked with so many different groups, he's grown a network of thieves and criminals like him. So that's something you can work into something with your DM of maybe that's how you gather information. Maybe you have little side quests that pop up, but you have a reliable and trustworthy contact who acts as your liaison to a network of other criminals. You know how to get messages to and from your contact, even over great distances. Specifically, you know the local messengers, corrupt caravan masters, and seedy sailors who can deliver messages for you. So it's essentially you have this network of thieves and criminals that can help you gather information on things. Maybe you're doing some sort of uh, intrigue campaign where there's a lot of information gathering, and there's these people that you have to talk to and investigate, and maybe tapping into this criminal network can help you uncover something in your investigation.
I don't know if it says something about me as a DM, but as soon as you started talking about that, it's like if my players forgot about that mechanic and I wanted to encourage them to use it again, I would just have the ring sending message to them every downtime with just like, why did you leave me on read? Or it's just like, why are you ignoring? It's like your car's extended warranties expire. Like just all of these things trying to get them to send messages back and utilize it. But it's just like, how do you get someone to like remember that? Because you could be in a dungeon for a long time and forget that that's part of your skill, and you're actually back into the town, you're shopping and stuff. It's like I need to look into like ways to use this. So I'm just like, how would you encourage that? And then I'm like
Yeah.
annoyingly sending them letters back.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way to bring it up, and like, I feel like if that's part of your character's background, and like I said, like that's part of the story that I would weave with Marduk is that he's been a criminal that's worked with so many different fellow criminals and thieves that he's grown this network and he's become part of this network. Um, so like it's something that as a player I feel like you wouldn't necessarily forget, but if you do, like as you're saying as a DM, you can have maybe maybe the barkeep at the next tavern you go to is a messenger from this network, and that's how they try to get or they try to reestablish contact with you or something like that. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of openings you can take to not necessarily have the player initiate the contact with the network, but have the network contact the player.
Yeah. I think one of the funnest things to do at a table is passing notes between a DM and another player.
Hmm.
It puts so much like there's just I don't want to say it's distrust, but there's a lot of you do that and someone catches on. What was that? Why are you sliding nuts between each other? And then the DM's just like, don't worry about it. And then the other player's like, yeah, don't worry about it. And you're like, hold on. And so out of character, people are starting to be like, all right, what the hell's going on with this? And then they'll start trying to jump in character, trying to find out what these notes are. And then that can lead to some other fun things. Or they also start passing notes. I think
Yep.
not as a DM, not directly telling something to a player that everybody can hear is fun, but I also love as a player passing notes to the DM, asking a question like, "Hey, if I do this, is this chill?" And then I'll do it, and then it can bring out some great things from the party. Like, yeah, I'm gonna cast a spell in a unique way, and then everybody's like, "Oh, that was a great idea." It's like, all right.
And as a little bonus tip for a DM or for a player, if you really want to enhance the in-person roleplay, if you're sending notes, um, it takes about maybe 10 to 15 minutes to stain a page, stain a piece of paper with tea. If you just soak a piece of paper in tea for like 10 or 15 minutes, let it dry overnight, you now have a beautifully aged piece of paper that looks like very appropriate for a D&D setting.
I think that might have to be another episode. Is just ways to immerse players into a D&D session. We'll definitely put this on for
Yeah.
another thing, but I would love to talk about presentation as a DM and ways to kind of bring people in, because there's a lot of stuff that I've always wanted to do and talk about and try that isn't like a production quality level. Here's a whole like set piece that we just dropped down. It's like not everybody has time to make that, but it's like
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a Critical Role type production style stuff. Like it literally just little things go a long way. Like when you're doing an in-person session, especially role play.
even if you're doing a module, and I know we're tangenting a little bit, but even doing a module and it's like hand your players X piece of paper. If you just take a little bit of time to make that piece of paper look good, it goes a long way. Except for in one case in Rise of the Rune Lords and Pathfinder, where it tells you to put fingernail clippings and hair of a player inside of the letter. Don't do that. Do not do
Yeah,
that.
that's a little creepy.
Trust
You
me.
could, if you wanna get a good laugh out of that, and you want to do something like that, like maybe take a little scrap of paper and write on it like so and so's fingernails or so and so's hair. But yeah, no, that would be a little creepy, definitely.
Oh no, it was a very creepy experience, and that's a story for another day. But back to our characters, Thunk.
Yes, back to our characters.
um, Once you've gotten your character set up, and it sounds like at this point your character is ready to engage and do your first session. What are some do's and don'ts at the first session table? You sit down, your DM goes over, the background, goes over, where people are, and in most cases, you're either meeting at a tavern, you're meeting at a guild hall, you're meeting in public. There's an event that happens, and the players are all kind of clumped together. What are some do's and don'ts? The first big don't is don't be a dick.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's a very broad don't. And you can interpret that in many ways, and one of those ways is just be considerate of other, like,
Right.
be very considerate of other people and their needs and their wants as well. Like, you're there as a group. You're there as a group to have fun and create a story together.
You are
So yeah, just don't be a dick.
Yeah, you are not the main character of the story. You are, even though we've created these very typical
I mean, you
edgelord
created a
characters.
warlock.
Yeah, it's true. But when you sit down, everybody wants to introduce their character and have the time to shine to kind of get out there and kind of like, hey, here I am. This is my character. Let people express their character. Don't mock the characters that they're bringing to the table. Don't harass the characters, and just give everybody a chance to kind of play and let the story kind of play out as they go. Hopefully the DM will give you time to actually sit and rest in between encounters or dungeons and stuff where you can interact with each other to allow you to have that role playing story. But it just don't come in 0 to 10. I'm gonna this is my character. I'm so dark and deep. It's like everybody's there that they want to tell their story. Give your snippet, give your time, but allow others to sit down and do it as well. That's one of the big key things, because you're all spending several hours a week trying to play this game. Don't alienate, don't isolate, but allow other people to have fun and encourage. Always try to encourage. And if there is something at the table that is a little red flaggy, talk to the DM, talk to the player, out of character between sessions. We can talk about what happens if you have a red flag situation in another episode, but just allow people to express themselves. That is the biggest thing that we can recommend at the table.
Yeah, you're there, like I said, you're there creating a story as a group. Like, you might have an idea for where, like, what your character's story is, and that's where your backstory really comes into play. But as a group, and this is probably one of the do's, is embrace the improv. Like, you're gonna have to improvise in situations where not everything is gonna go according to plan. Like, you're not going to always get a critical hit on something. You're gonna have fails here and there, not only in combat, but in role play as well. And you just have to roll with the punches and embrace that. Embrace the improvisation of role play, because that is the first word in RPG is role play.
One example of this was I joined a group of people playing at my job, and my boss was running a campaign. And I talked to him, and we decided that I was going to be playing this uptight half elf, of course, because I'm always playing half elves, a half elf sorcerer who was like top of his class at the Mage Society and stuff like that. And he was traveling from point A to point T to go back home, and they encountered kobolds, and that sets off the encounters that we come across. And throughout the whole pre-combat, conversations and stuff, I was a very uptight, very kind of pain in the ass kind of character, and everybody in the group hated me until the first combat happened, and I couldn't land a hit to save my life. My rolls that night were atrocious. And as the campaign went on, people kept bringing up the fact that I was just all talk and no show, and it kind of became the character of this dude was just so sheltered that actually being a spellcaster in a combat situation, he was just awful and no one liked him. And it got to the point where they accidentally killed him by pushing him down a cliff during a
Oh, I'm sure
confrontation.
that was accidentally.
I don't think it was. I don't know if they didn't like me as a person at the table. I was still allowed to play, and that's when I got to create the warrior, which people liked a lot more. But I think just I was so useless to the table, and there's a lot of things going on with that. Mainly, I never got a long rest to get my spell slots back.
Yeah,
So
that'll happen.
yeah, you don't a wizard without or a sorcerer without spells is pretty rough. So, but anyways, just rolling with the punches. If the story is pushing you or the dice are pushing you one way, lean into it. Have some fun with it. Maybe have that be your first kind of character arc of maybe I do suck. Maybe how do I make my character not suck and back up his words or kind of prove that maybe he's a little hubris and he needs to get over that hump and not be such uptight wizard man. So
Yeah. I'd say, and this kind of plays into something that, like with improv, you're not necessarily in your own comfort zone, but something that needs to be talked about, and definitely in session zero, is like what are you comfortable with? What kind of content are you comfortable with as a player? Like, and as like, what are you comfortable with interacting with?
that's a,
And this is where like some triggers would happen for some people. Like what kind of violent things do you want or not want? What kind of mature content do you want to see or not want to see? Like what are you comfortable with as a player? These are things that really should be discussed before the introduction to the campaign even happens.
yeah, that's a really good point. We should have probably put this up further in our notes, but yeah, like you said, not everybody has the same level of comfortability with certain terms and topics, and everybody's lived their lives and certain things bother them more than others, and being able to at any stage of your life sit down and talk to people about what I am and not comfortable with is fine. Some people may be okay with some pushing of boundaries, kind of like seeing a horror movie. You may be squeamish, but you love enjoying that kind of artificial thrill of a horror picture and stuff. But talking to people to understand that level of where that boundary is and respecting it. Nothing sucks worse than being invited into a RPG group, either a pug or an online session in a Discord, or even with some friends of friends. You sit down, you make your character, you go through, and it gets overtly gruesome or just in many different ways not safe for work, and it's not good. You never want to go back to that. Your character's being touched by other characters and brought into situations, and if you're not comfortable with that and being able to back out, you're just in an awful situation. So talk to the people, let them know, and kind of remind them if it does start crossing that line. It's like, hey, can we time out here? Can we step that back? That is definitely one of the best things to bring up is read the room.
Yeah. Yeah, read the room and don't be afraid to voice your opinion on things. Like as we've been saying, this is all for fun. Nobody should be doing anything out of malice, so it should all be with good intention. So maybe there was just some misunderstandings or miscommunications, but that's why it's good to be vocal about these things up front. So so the entire group knows that like what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. And even if you're not comfortable sharing these things with the entire group, please just share them at least with your DM, so they're at least aware and can help steer conversations or steer actions on your behalf.
Yeah. And this is the nuclear option, but you're always welcome to leave. There may be that social nuance and all that stuff, but it's a game. You should always be able to just step back and say, I'm not comfortable playing anymore, and find a group that is more to your taste. Never feel like you are obligated to be in a situation where you shouldn't be. We don't know how all groups go, but it's a game. Just like any game, you can quit. Unless it's World of Warcraft.
No one's no one's forcing you to play, or at least hopefully no one's forcing you to play. And like it's all for fun. And if you're not having fun, it might be time to try something else. But we hope that you do have a lot of fun playing D&D and other tabletop RPGs like Pathfinder or Fate or other systems. And it's fun.
Yeah. And that's mostly what happens at a session 0. You sit down, you make your character, and talk about kind of what to do. Hopefully in the future we will be less about mechanics and more about rich backstories and characters themselves, and you'll be able to download the things. But since this is our first episode, we're trying to figure out what works and doesn't. So please, if you are listening and you enjoyed it, or if you have criticism, we'd love to hear that as well. We want the show to be listenable and enjoyable, so please leave that in the comment section down below, or send us a tweet. We might have a Twitter handle at some point, or anything else like that. We'll have that in the bio description after this. But please let us know. And if you have questions that you would like answered on the show, leave them in the comment section down below, and we will try to answer them best we can in the next episode if we get to it.
And let us know what edgy characters you would create.
Yes, that is another thing. What do you think is the most edgy D&D character possible? Class, heritage, and any other traits that you could give them. We would love to know in your current circle what your favorite edgy character is. That all the call to actions? Did we hit YouTube's quota?
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Hit
that
bell.
Notification bell.
We'll get a better call to action thing in the end. But we appreciate it.
No worries.
This has been a long episode. We've been planning this for a while, and we're just happy to get this out and hear what you think. So please join us next time here at the Character Forge. This has been Campter.
This has been Randall.
And we will see you next time.